So today I'm tasting Sidr Honey for the Honey Advent. So we're on day 4. Now Sidr Honey is just, there's so many stories around it. And I first came to hear about it because I had a trip to Oman. And prior to my trip to Oman, one of my herbal medicine tutors, he had asked if I'd read the Quran. And in the Quran there's a chapter which talks about, well, it's called the bee. There's a whole chapter called the bee. And there's a paragraph in this chapter that says, put the hives in the mountains, in the trees, or where they choose, and from their bellies emerges a liquid of diverse colours, and from this is healing for the people. And then it says, surely this is a sign for those who reflect. And I just love that on so many levels, because you often get questioned about, is it right to eat honey? You know, are the bees making honey for humans? Which they're definitely not. They need it for themselves. However, we look at honey with a human perspective, and we should be looking at a holistic perspective. And what I believe the bees know is that they are part of the big circle of life, and this is what humans have forgotten. So bees know that they create this magical medicinal product, this amazing honey of diverse colours. It's the medicine from the plants transformed into this liquid gold. And they know that we need it to heal us. And if we respect the bees, we can take that honey and use it as medicine, and it will heal us. And there's so much scientific proof now to show the medicinal benefits of honey. So, you know, we know it's there. But as humans, we keep detaching ourselves from the whole cycle, and we can't quite get that balance right. So I believe that if we're taking honey from the bees, or if the bees are happy to share it with us, for a start, they're less likely to sting you if you have taken honey with their permission. But also, it's our duty to make sure the bees have enough food. We should make sure that they have toxic-free food, so that they have an abundance of floral nectar, so that they can then have a surplus of honey. And I think that's where we have a bit of a mismatch, is that we've been concreting or tarmacking our landscape and taking down trees and ploughing up meadows and producing lots of monocultures that don't have the blossoms, and the bees need the food. So I talk about it in my book, A to Bees, but I have got quite a few samples of Sidr Honey. So National Honey Co. I have this one. They will recognise the name, but I can't read the name because it's in Arabic. But I've actually visited their shop in Muscat. And then this is a little sample. You can see there's not much of this left. This is from my dear friend Dr. Hassan, Royal Honey in Muscat. But the honey I'm going to taste today is from this teeny weeny little pot, and it's from Mistar, so Beit Al Mistar, and it's called Misvar Honey, and I'm gonna be tagging him in. And it's a Sidr honey from Oman. Now Sidr honey is best known from the Yemen, and I do not have any samples of Yemeni honey, sadly. I would love to see the difference. But the whole culture of the Arabian Peninsula is very entwined with magic, Islam, and the respect for the land and the respect for the bees. Now you'd think in a desert and a mountainous area where there doesn't seem to be a lot of flora, that what on earth would the bees feed from? And the big shock for me was that in people's homes, they have sort of 500 1-litre jars, bottles of honey, and they treat it as medicine. So a lot of honey is sold in these big, sort of like a drinking bottle really, of honey. So you think, gosh, how can there be so much honey? Plus, it's very disrespectful to use chemicals on the land and on the crops. So you have a really pure environment, which is just super for bees. Now the Sidr, this is what I'm tasting, is Sidr. Now you can see it's a really sticky, solid honey. It's liquid, but you can stand your spoon up in it So it's a really unusual honey, and it takes forever to crystallise. I have got, when you get a bit low, some of them do seem to just slightly crystallise around the edges, but that could be because there's other floral sources in there. But the Sidr tree is this incredible tree, and I love trees, so it's good to do a tree honey while we're in National Tree Week. And it's a really spiky tree with tiny, tiny little flowers that have little edible fruit. And they can get 2 crops a year of Sidr honey from the bees. And it's just an abundant nectarous tree. It's an old ancient tree. And it's said to have been the tree that was used in Christ's crown of thorns. So it does have these huge, great thorns. Perhaps in England we tend to think, we westernise the whole story, and we think of it as being hawthorn, but the hawthorns are tiny. I mean, they can be vicious, but they're tiny. These Sidr thorns are huge and very, very sharp. And so the Sidr tree is a magical tree. It has deep roots that have to spread far and wide to attract whatever nutrients it can to get into the tree to keep the tree alive. So it is a magical honey. And there are Sidr trees all around the world. So different regions have their own Sidr honey. So all across the Arabian Peninsula, parts of Africa. Now you can also have jujube trees, or jujube, which are in Madagascar. So that is a type of Sidr, but the honey from that is completely different. So it's really interesting. And I find this fascinating that you can have honeys from supposedly the same plant, but from a different region, and the taste is completely different. So now I'm going to taste it. This really is amber gold, and I'm so lucky to have some of this honey. So it almost stays in its shape in your mouth, and it takes a while. It's not until it's really warmed up that it starts to dissolve. Hello. Now it does have quite an astringent flavour, a little bit almondy, and I'm starting. It's on my list of things to research, but I am finding with the crossover with herbal medicine and with honeys that there's something about that almond terpene or the almond flavour that is linked with medicinal properties. So if anybody knows more about that, I'd love to know, and save me reading more papers and books. But it does have a very distinctive flavour. Once you've tasted Sidr, you can always recognise it, but it's really hard to describe, because unless you've grown up with it, or you've seen the tree, or you've smelt the flowers, you don't have anything to attach it to. This is Sidr honey from Oman. So it is a really, really unusual honey. And when I first went to Bologna to study the honey sensory analysis, we had to learn 18 different honeys, and they were basically European honeys. And the definition, the EU definition of honey, is liquid that comes from Apis mellifera and or from honeydew. So that is the excretions of aphids that Apis mellifera will process into a honey. And I will try a honeydew honey. I will taste one of those during my Advent. But after going to the first course in 2017, I then travelled to Oman. And of course they've got different species of bees. So they have Apis florea, and then they have different subspecies of Apis mellifera, and some that are endemic to the regions. And so it then began this whole conversation about what is honey. And humans have been eating honey substances from all kinds of species of bees from all around the world for thousands and thousands of years. So what is wonderful about the honey sensory analysis course is once they opened it up to be teaching in English, they attracted not just English people, but people from all around the world whose second, third, or even fourth language was English. But it meant that they could then study honey sensory analysis. And it's now shaking up the honey world, because we are now exposed to amazing honeys from all around the world. And they're all just magnificent. And they all are a geographical map of the flora of that region. So I really, really recommend you taste Sidr. So I'm going to tell you the story of this little jar. I'd visited Oman. My husband was working there, and so I had some free time, and I met Dr. Hassan, who took me out to Rustak, so I saw the traditional beekeepers with their date palm hives, so that was amazing. And then I have a wonderful friend called Maria, who organises travel and trips for me, and I am probably a nightmare, well, a love-hate customer, because I have fantastic trips, but they're always quite complicated and they're not standard. So she arranged for me to have a guide who would take me out into the desert. And another dear friend, Helen Hermanstein-Smith, who does image cakes, she had travelled to Oman and visited Nizwa Market. And Nizwa Market is a goat market. It's about 2 or 3 hours, or maybe even 4 hours about 2.5 hours west of Muscat, and at the base of the mountains. And every Friday morning, starting at 6 a.m, they have this market, and you have farmers who come from all around Oman to trade their goats. And it was quite an extraordinary experience. And my husband actually had the day off, so he came with me. He knew I was going to go anyway, with or without him, but he then decided to come with me. Hi Helen, good to be here. So thanks to Helen, we went to Nizwa. I had to get up at sort of 3:30 in the morning and got picked up and drove to Nizwa. And Nizwa is extraordinary for a white English person, because you just stand out. It is so deep in culture that has not changed for thousands of years, and you just look so Western and so tall, and there's people in all their traditional costumes, there were masks, there was all kinds of extraordinary things, and the widest range of goats you've ever seen, and camels that were in the backs of trucks, all bundled up together. It was just amazing. And there were honey sellers as well. However, after the market, our guide said, I'm going to take you to see a beekeeper, because Maria, my wonderful travel agent, had said, Paula's into bees, she's got to find bees, she's got to see beekeepers. So he has a friend who has this honey business, and he's in this, we were heading up, we drove out of Nizwa, so it was, by the time we'd done the market, it was still only 9 o'clock in the morning, and you could see this mountain that just looked barren as anything. It was just this grey mountain, and he said, we're going to go up there, there's this ancient city, 700 years old, with an old fort, and there's a date palm with all the ancient water irrigation in it. And he said, we're going to go there. And you're looking at the mountain, you cannot see a speck of green. It's just like, well, okay, I can't believe there'll be any bees up there. So we drive up this mountain, we're twisting up this mountain. And then there's like a false peak, and you just come over this false peak, and you just see all these date palms, and they're nestled into this sort of crevice of the mountain. And it was just so lush. It was amazing. It was a real oasis, and there's this ancient fort. And this beekeeper, this wonderful beekeeper, has his little shop, and he has his bees. And he was so kind, and he opened up some of the hives. He had some Langstroth hives, and he also has the date palm log hives. And I tasted his honey, and I brought back 2 little jars. And so this is his bit of Sidr honey, and I have got some of his Sumar honey as well. So this does have a slight taste of dates, but it isn't dates. When you have the Sumar honey, that's much more dates. And again, coming from England, and although I am quite widely travelled, I'd never really thought about dates and whether there would be pollen or nectar. And he had this branch of blossom, and he just tapped it like that, and it was just this fine dust of pollen. So it's amazing. It's amazing what you see when you travel. So this is his Sidr honey, and I'm going to tag him so that if you want to see some of his videos and pictures of the amazing place where he lives. So his shop is all open on one side, no glass, and the bees can just fly out and go to this amazing date palm terrace. So you have all these terraces built into the mountains with this ancient irrigation system, so that they have the water, and the people have their own little patch, their own little plateau with a few palms on, and then they take turns to water, for the water to be directed to their palms. And it's just amazing, and you can walk for hours around these little ridges. So when you taste Sidr, there is so much magic in just a drop of honey. You've got the magic of the Quran, you've got the medicinal properties of the Sidr plant. You've got the story of Christ's thorn. You've got the landscape, the magical landscape. You've got the culture of the Arabians who bless their soil, bless their land, bless their bees, and are gifted in return with this heavenly, completely heavenly honey. So I give you Sidr, and if ever you have the chance to taste some Sidr, you should. And if ever you have the chance to travel and go to Oman, then do. And if you live in Yemen, and if you could ever convince my husband to let me go there, I would love to try some Yemeni Sidr honey and just see the difference. So there we go. So today, a really exciting day 4 of the Honey Advent, and all about Sidr. So have a wonderful day, and catch up with my other Advents, and meet me every day, and I'll share a different honey from my collection tomorrow. Okay, see you.